Morning, and great to see you all this morning. Thank you for joining us. Special thanks, Bob Edmonds and his wife Deb. They took our family in for a summer back in 2006, I believe. And Father Bob was the rector of St. Andrews at a beautiful spot. It was at the corners of Summer and Winter Street in a hot spot, a beautiful island right off of Cape Cod. In this small town of Edgartown. And my ministry for him that summer as a seminarian was to remind people that when God goes on vacation, God goes to Edgartown. And so I went around to all the inns and all bed and breakfasts and put little placards in every room saying, you're on vacation, well, so is God right here, and inviting people to join us. But more importantly, as I got to know Father Bob and Deb that summer, and they embraced my family and my formation as a priest, I learned about Deb's history and her family with the Middle East, and then Bob's ministry there as well. And then after he stepped down as rector, he went off and actually served, working for the Bishop of Jerusalem for several years. So Bob and Deb are here with us. So thank you for joining us, Bob. Thank you for joining us, Deb. And they'll speak more to all that in a minute. Yep, go ahead. You can leave yourself unmuted. That's fine.
We have a lot to answer. We have a lot to answer for you, Mark.
Yeah, that might be a separate Zoom session, everybody. And then, of course,
go ahead.
So, and then we have, of course, Najat. And she and her husband Samir, when he was a priest, the lone bishop of Jerusalem, lived there, raised Rula, who's with us today, thank you, and her sister, Summer, and they were raised for some of their time in Beirut itself. And so for most of us, we don't quite fully understand the complexity of the Middle East, let alone the Episcopal Church, Anglican Church as work, and that the seat is in Jerusalem for the primate, but also that includes the Lebanon and the city of Beirut in this particular case. And so I'm grateful for all four of you for joining us today. Jill Henderson's also on my screen down there. She's been has been our lead advocate for our ministry at St. Bart's to go on pilgrimage to the Middle East, in particular the Holy Land. And she's the one who's been our primary advocate for keeping us connected with our annual partnership with the church in Jerusalem and the Middle East. So thank you, Jill, for joining us today. I want to just share a few things. Bob and Deb, they gave me a gift, close to my ordination, and of course it's an icon, and some of you have seen it before, but it's a beautiful one, and it's of course hand-drawn there in the Holy Land. So that's in my prayer table, and so obviously they were in Jerusalem before I ever got there. And then my lovely wife, she's there somewhere on the screen. There she is. Yep. She went to Jerusalem before I got there. And this was in 2014. And so she came back with what you see online. When I do Eucharist online, you'll see the paten and you'll see the chalice I use, which are glass, but they were handmade there as well. There are other mementos over the years that have come along, but those are the two that are my default in my presence when I think about the ministry of the church in the Holy Land. And so if I could just invite us to go into prayer, and then we'll move on from there. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Lord God, we give you thanks for this day. We love you, we praise you and bless you, and we give you thanks for your Son, Jesus Christ. We give you thanks for the gift of your Spirit that binds us together through this Zoom and in ministry throughout this land and throughout the world. In particular, on this day, we hold fast our ministry shared with the work of the church to serve all people in the Middle East, not just in Jerusalem, not just, quote, the Holy Land. And so we give thanks for the faithful servants over the years, over the decades, that give themselves faithfully to all people, whether it be Jews, whether it be Muslims, whether it be Christians, whether it be Palestinians, whether it be anyone, doesn't matter. A ministry that serves all people and makes your love real and tangible to them. We give thanks for the work and gifts shared over the decades. And we pray for the two bishops right now of Jerusalem, and we pray for the ministry of the church going forth. It's hard for many of us, not everyone, but hard for some of us to appreciate the struggles for life, for peace, and for concord on a daily basis in an area of our world, an area of our country, area of the life of our church that's so complex. And yet the living stones persevere throughout it all. So as we gather now, open our ears, open our hearts to hearing about the ministry, hearing about the people, and then more importantly, guide us through your Spirit, Lord God, and how we can participate in going forth. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mark. Ken and Bob, if we could start with you, if you could talk to us a bit about the ministry of the church in the Middle East and your experiences there, that would be awesome.
I'm happy to be here. What a great joy. And I want to thank Mark for his generous invitation to participate. And what a particular joy to be able to have Najat and Rula on the same call at the same time.
Thank you.
This is just a great joy for us personally, I can't tell you. And Jill, your advocacy is marvelous and helpful. Aside from those thanks, I also want to thank the staff and clergy and people of St. Bart's for the ongoing support of the Good Friday offering. That has been it's a major part of my work is shepherding that ministry along, and it provides a significant and meaningful contribution to the support the ministries of the province of Jerusalem in the Middle East, which actually is 3 dioceses. I won't go to all those details, but my job for presiding Bishop Curry has to do with being in touch with the 3 dioceses of the province: Cyprus and the Gulf, which is a whole long story all by itself, remarkable. The Diocese of Iran. There are Anglicans in Iran. I can count them on about that many, but there are some there. And also the Diocese of Jerusalem in the Middle East. What I'd like to do is to hand over some of this to my wife, Deborah, who's got a story to tell of her own. And then I'll pick up again when she's done with some other details.
Hi, it's nice to see all of you, and especially Najat and Rula, because we were actually in Beirut at the same time. My history with the Middle East, and therefore ours, started back in 1959 when my father accepted the position to be basically the headmaster, the president of International College, which was the feeder school to the American University of Beirut. I went to a French school when I was little, the Collège Protestant Français de Jeunes Filles, where I learned to curse every morning, walking to greet the teacher. And so I had language by immersion. That's one experience. After that, for a while, we came back to the States for a year, went back, and I went to the American school. And then the 1967 war broke out. And so I was evacuated with that group, and subsequently and before that, because I came back and stayed for a number of years, lived through the various riots and curfews and airport bombings and conflicts that happened in Beirut. I do definitely remember from a very young age pictures of napalm children in the newspaper from when Israel bombed southern Lebanon. And then it got closer and closer when they bombed the airport that then I landed on a week later with all the burned out planes on the tarmac. So that's part of my life. I stayed until I left for late prep school, and my mother eventually came back. My father stayed, married a Lebanese woman, and was staying through the Civil War until he almost got kidnapped. Having escaped the kidnapping, he came back to the States for about 5 years, during which time his Lebanese wife commuted to visit him because she was trying to hold on to the apartment from squatters. He eventually did get back, and he stayed until the age of 93 when he passed away. My first experience going to Jerusalem was in 1963 while it was still part of Jordan. And then my next experience in Jerusalem was when I followed Bob over on a sabbatical trip that he went to in 2007. Quite a difference. So that's my brief history. The one other thing I would throw in there is Bishop Kafidi, then priest Father Kafidi, was there at the same time that we were there. And my mother was active in helping him establish St. Luke's School for, then it was called mentally retarded children. And so we have an intertwined history, even though we haven't probably seen each other face to face much at all. I guess that's what I have to share.
And you serve with Bishop Suhail.
When we did go back to serve with Bishop Suhail, when Bob was serving as his chaplain, I took on the position of being Bishop Suhail's personal PA, personal assistant, and was his English-speaking secretary in the office, managing some international Anglican fundraising for all their institutions of healthcare and education, as well as a little bit of diplomacy and hosting people, and his letters and his schedule and various other things. So it was a very, very busy time.
That was from 2008 to 2011, and Deborah and I both shared the responsibility, basically, of external relations for Bishop Suhail, then Bishop Suhail. Since that time, it's worth noting, as far as the ministry of the diocese is concerned, you're probably well aware of this, but I'll just review it very quickly. The diocese has ministry in Gaza and Israel, the West Bank, Jordan, Syria, and indeed Lebanon. About 30 institutions of education and healthcare between schools and hospitals and clinics. Schools could be K through 12. Some of the schools are intertwined with educational programs like the school in Lebanon. And they've got about 30 parishes, give or take, spread throughout that whole region. In particular, where our focus really today is on Beirut, in Lebanon, the Church of All Saints, which Najat and Rula can tell you way more about than I, but real quickly, has two congregations, one Arabic speaking and one English speaking. Mm-hmm. The international community is strong in Beirut, as you might well imagine. And in addition to that, up in the hill country, in a little village called Beit Mary, is the St. Luke's School that Deborah mentioned earlier, which continues to function. And the remarkable thing about that school's program, aside from many things, but the most wonderful thing to me is we've got a program for children and young adults who are challenged in so many ways, all kinds of special needs. And this is a Christian school. It doesn't make any bones about being a Christian institution, but the students are all Shia and Sunni Muslim kids. And the Shia and Sunni don't always get along well, as you know, but they all get along well there. And everyone is so grateful, I mean, to the point of tears all the time, for having their kids in a safe environment where they are cared for and taught and have a hope for the future. And it's all about hope. That's the big thing. So this is a remarkable ministry in Lebanon, in addition to the work that the parish does, which is extensive as well. The priest in charge there is Imad Zurab, who is archdeacon for Lebanon and Syria. And he also has responsibility for keeping track of church property and a ministry in Damascus as well. So I hand it over. There's more, I can go on for hours. There we go.
And Deb, thank you also for sharing your experiences. And I think that provided a really perfect segue to Najat and Rula. If you could talk to us a bit about your experiences in Lebanon and the people and the humanity there, that would be awesome.
Rula, you want to start?
Okay, I can start. My experience there was that of a elementary school. I was born there and I was there until 4th grade. So my perspective of the town, the city, the country is that through the lens of an elementary school age girl. The thing I remember most about All Saints is its location on the waterfront. I remember going there just to run around outside by the water. I remember a big terrace where it sits on, and we can stand there and watch the waves crash into the shore on Beirut. I was baptized in All Saints. I have many pictures of me being there. I remember my father standing at the pulpit there. I have stories that my mom says that of me, a toddler me crawling through the aisles just to get to him, to the pulpit. So I did also start learning French in Lebanon, as that was the customary language besides Arabic. That's kind of what all I remember, besides going on trips in the car to the mountains and to the various organizations. But I did not grasp the intensity of the work there. Considering my age, I was just out there to have fun and play in the rocks and climb trees. So that's the input that I can give, but I think my mom there can give more in-depth, personal narrative.
But Rula, do you remember me taking you to the 6th floor at the American hospital to give trays to the children who have shrapnels?
Yes, yeah, and I remember also after the Civil War broke out, the next day a bomb explodes on one of the streets. My mom would take Summer and I to go watch the crater and collect. We had a collection of shrapnels and gun casings and all that. I mean, as you know, this is for a 6- and 7-year-old. That was our hobbies, to go there after the thing and deal with it. So this is my experience of life in Beirut during the Civil War. My mom volunteered at the AUH, American University Hospital. So she would take us with her to entertain the little kids that have been injured in bombings and stuff. And we would share stories. And to us, we were just kids, looking at each other. It wasn't like we were doing them any extra work. But yes, I do have vivid memories of being in that, and my mom in the pink volunteer outfit, dragging us with her floor to floor. So with that, I turn it back to you, Mom.
Yeah. Well, All Saints Church is one of the most active churches. It started as a mission to the seamen. And in 1948, when all the Palestinians were left Palestine or expelled from Palestine, by choice and by force also, they came, the cream of the Anglican population from all Palestine came to Lebanon. It's the enlightened place in the Arab world. It's where all the university, the culture, the Eastern culture and the Western culture intermingle. You can find whatever you want there. Being far away from politics, I did not interfere with that ugly, corrupted system. But I had the best time, 11 years of my life. People were very understanding and very nice, all educated, very educated people, those Palestinians who were expelled. So they chose to be in Ras Beirut. Ras Beirut is where the American University and the American Hospital and the International College and what all those American and English speaking were. So the Palestinians spoke English. They lived in Ras Beirut and flourished there. The church is in the Zaytuna area. It's been mentioned lately on the news, where the airport, where all the rummage of what was left from the Civil War, threw it in front of our church or saints and built like an island there. And because of the British consulate, this man, whom I respect, sent him my regards, but I don't know him. He said St. Luke's All Saints should remain a church in that area. Otherwise, if he wasn't a consulate of an English kingdom, they wouldn't listen to him. So due to him, we have still the church among all the big, long buildings which was built on that island, which has rummage of the Civil War underneath it. Lebanon, well, Beit Mary were sent, I hate to say mentally retarded, no, it's mentally challenged children, was run by Lina Saleh. Lina Saleh from our church, she lives maybe now in Jordan. She served those kids with love and affection. And when we go up and visit, they jump over her. And some of the kids, they go and they sleep in her bed. She gave them so much love. And she has a brother who has a Mongol symptom. So she had extra love because her brother is with her, as if with her, serving him. Later on, Lena had an assistant, and the signs of a civil unrest started coming. It's 1965, 1966. You could feel it on the campus of the AUH, the American University. Our student, who Samir was a guardian for them, they all had problems against each other, against the Palestinians. Israel, Palestine, Israel it's always the source. Everything, if you dig, it's because of Israel. I'm not a political diplomatic person. I say it as it is. So Samir would always have problems on the campus looking after our boys whose families from Ramallah, from Amman. Please, Samir, look for our kids. There is unrest. There is something going on the campus. So we felt there is something going on, and the Palestinians were part of it. Not because they are willing, they were indulged with that. What was I going to say? And that campus to me was everything in my life. The childhood of my daughters were on it. I would take their tricycles and walk from Shara Abdul Aziz to the medical gate. And the medical gate, it's about 6-7 minutes walk from my house. And I would go to the campus and the girls would play with their tricycle in a safe place. Many of our parishioners were teachers at the AUB and doctors at the AUH. So we felt as it is our home, the American hospital and the American university, our home, and the people who were serving there from America and England would come to All Saints as well. It was such a nice place. My best years in life were those 11 years of All Saints and of Beirut, Lebanon. When I went back to Jerusalem, let me go back to Beit Mary. Sorry, I'm interrupted. After Lena Saleh moved, she felt that there is a sign of unrest in the area. She moved back to Amman, and then she was appointed by some international organization to lead something, to run some institution. So there is a lady, Rosemary Boulos. She's a Syrian lady, married to a Syrian man, she looked like Sophia Loren, those beautiful eyes, young, vivacious, she loved the kids. And sad ending. She was kidnapped and we don't know what happened to her. They found her keys. That was in Beit Mary. They found her keys. The car was still running. Her purse with her wallet still there intact. And then we don't know what happened to the body. How was she killed? So the church decided to shut down Beit Mary, the mentally challenged place.
St. Luke's.
Then we had Father Endevik institution for, they call it then deaf and dumb. It's very unfair to say those words now. And it was Father Endevik, a Dutch reverend, a Dutch ordained minister ran it, but I don't know what happened to it. I think it's closed, it's good. George Toro was helping in that institution, I think, and George Toro died at a young age. So when we left in 1976, the end of it, almost the end of it, I lost contact, but my heart was there. I always loved the people. I always asked about them. And I felt, why did I go back to Jerusalem? Samir was taking on more responsibilities, secretary of the diocese, and then he became a bishop. But still, if I have to choose living in Beirut or becoming a bishop's wife and lead all that kind of life, I would prefer to be in Beirut. It meant so much to me. And well,
Najat, there's a lot of wisdom right there.
wisdom, you know me, Mark, you know me, how impulsive I am, and I say things as they are, you know me. Anyway, Mr. Malcolm Kerr was killed. He was the president of the AUB when we were in Jerusalem. He came and visited us because he wanted his daughter to take the experience of Jerusalem and be with us and teach in St. George's School. So Susan was my daughter's age, and she was all the time in our house. And he said, when your girls grow to be college age, I will take care of them at the American University in Beirut. And that did not happen because he was killed on the campus by those factions of students who all carried arms. I don't know which party they were on. His wife, I think she kept contact with me for some time, but she's in Los Angeles. I heard that she was married. Her son is Steve Kerr. He's very famous in basketball. And I think he was born in Lebanon. I'm not quite sure. And he always played basketball, saying that he is from Lebanon. And he had this scarf on his neck, and he is so proud to be a Middle Eastern. Sometimes he said, I'm an Arab, and I'm proud to be a Lebanese, and I'm proud of being, educated in that area. Till now, I think he's an elderly man, but Steve Kerr is very well known in the American. Why, Rula, you are laughing?
He's on
forgot
ESPN.
myself. I'm talking not, as if somebody is with me in the room, jumping from one subject to the
So
other.
Najat,
Yes.
So Steve Kerr, he's on ESPN probably every other day. Has been there for about 15, 20 years. So he's
You know of him?
Yeah, he's just a little bit famous, but he's also put his name recently to a fair amount of justice issues, and
Good.
living into that.
Yeah.
I wonder, Deb, jump in.
Just to jump in, we do still have a picture of Steve Kerr as a boy on the porch of our house where my father was when we were living.
That's
so
wonderful.
Obviously we followed all that. We still follow his basketball, even though I'm not a basketball fan.
But you should be.
But I should. But I would also like to interject and thank you, Najat and Rula, for bringing this up. I told you some of the rough parts of my upbringing. Lebanon was also, and still is, physically a stunningly beautiful country. And the weather was gorgeous. And you could, amidst all of this, you could go, swimming in the Mediterranean in the morning, and conceivably you could ski amongst the cedar trees in the afternoon. Yeah. So that was lovely. And what I remember most from my childhood, Rilla, and I was there from age 5 to age 17, but from my younger years especially, I think I picked this up. Everywhere, the Orthodox churches are playing their bells, and the mosques are calling out all the time. And you couldn't help living in that city, but just accept the fact that there is a God. We understand him differently, we worship him differently, but there was no question in that country, there is a God, and everybody had some relation to God. So I think it's a big part of my spirituality, as well as the fact that my grandfather was a bishop, but that was important for me. And then the community atmosphere that was in Lebanon. You're part of a family network is very important. You're part of your religious affiliation is very important. So culturally, the people were very community minded, and unlike the formation of our country, which was really leave home and leave the establishment to come make better for yourself, Lebanon is a place where people are intertwined, and their importance is gathered from what they can do for their family and their community. And that was really important part of the fiber as well. So I think those things are important to share.
Yeah, what a beautiful value statement around the Great Commandment there, Deb and Rula. Thank you for vouching for that. That sense of my sense of when I get to St. Peter's Gate for us Christians, did I care for my family and did I care for my neighbor? Right. That's beautiful. And unfortunately, spoke to a scientist the other day who explained the explosion that just happened. Essentially they equated it, and this was an engineer who does explosions, equated the magnitude of the explosion to be equaling to a tactical nuclear bomb going off right there on the waterfront. And in particular, he talked about the video you could see and the cloud that comes up, which is actually moisture from the heat, and it's traveling so fast. And he talked about when you could be at the tall buildings, not just immediately next to it, but further into the city, you can see that wave coming to you. And he said, you see it, and then all of a sudden, everything around you is just destroyed. And yesterday was an article in one of the papers about a doctor explaining that happening to one of the hospitals. Of the 53 medical institutions, I think half of them have been wiped out. And just talk about, you could see it coming. You knew something was wrong, and then all of a sudden, just everything destroyed. I don't know about you all, but I've never been in the presence of a nuclear bomb before. I've been around explosions, but not that. And I just can't even imagine the challenges for the people, the country, but specifically to this call for the church to be present in this time. And maybe Bob and then Najat, you could, Deb, you all could speak to the role of the church amidst disaster, upon war, upon famine, upon whatever the strife is. Where's the resiliency for the church to be present in these most challenging moments?
Mark, can I say something? Can I say something before I forget?
Oh, of course.
Mark, I want to tell Debbie, all those families that came to the Middle East at the beginning of the 19th century, created the American hospital and the American university, were great, great people, so much giving. The emblem on the American university is, I came to give you life and give it abundantly. So these are faithful, loyal, they put their faith into action and created to us the most beautiful institutions of the Middle East. Everybody who is so proud to say, I am an AUB graduate. They come from all over the world to the hospital. So all my respect and love to those families. The Bliss family, I cannot remember them, but they were so much giving, those people, so much faithful. So Debbie, I want to thank you and thank your family for being there for us, for Lebanon, and still you are there for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Bob, can you talk about the resiliency? That just speaks to it as well.
Just a couple things on the ministry at All Saints. I have the privilege of being in touch with ecumenical colleagues who are involved in Middle Eastern work, and we've been in touch with folks at the New York School of Theology and mission staff and churches and so forth. And All Saints Church joins all of the ministry in Beirut in reaching out to neighbors and friends and parishioners about dealing with the significant challenges that exist. As you can imagine, we've heard the reports, but something above 250,000 people are without housing or have had their housing significantly damaged, so it's not secure. And as one of my friends was talking about, they said, well, the security situation in Beirut is a little touchy anyway. Imagine if your windows aren't there and your doors are blown out. I mean, it's just kind of awe-inspiring, really. The damage at the church, people have asked me about that. The stained glass windows are basically intact. I guess one took a little damage, but the rest of them are fine. And the real damage at the church has to do with the church hall, where damage to doors and windows is extensive. Happily, Father Ahmad, who's a good friend, has marshaled forces to provide the kind of social services, the food and relief things that you would expect a parish to do at any of our places. You folks have got lots of fires going on in your neighborhood right now or nearby, and no doubt parishes in your area are reaching out to meet the needs of a whole bunch of people. But of course, the challenge that the church has right now in Beirut isn't just the explosion, it's also electricity and garbage pickup, and a government that hasn't functioned well in a long time, which just went and resigned. The banking system is a disaster area. The World Bank's issued a statement this weekend that talks about they expect half of Lebanon to be in poverty by the end of the year. I mean, imagine such a statement. So there are, I mean, you may have money in the bank, but the bank won't let you take it out. It's a little awkward. The exchange rates are crazy. If you have American dollars or euros, getting exchange rate into the Lebanese pound is a challenge. It's all kinds of like nitty gritty stuff of that nature. You go, what's not working right? Most everything's not working right. So it's a great, huge challenge indeed, just to kind of cope at all. Oh, and then there's the COVID thing. Thanks a lot. So the levels of struggle and challenge and in some cases desperation are significant. At the same time, as Archbishop Sohail is fond of saying, whenever I would come back from a meeting and wanted to pull out my hair when we were living in Jerusalem, and a little hair I have, it's not much of, he would say to me, Bob, he said, where are we living? I said, we're living in Jerusalem. I said, what is the city famous for? The resurrection. He said, we are the city of hope. I know. Yeah. So this attitude of hopefulness, not only for Archbishop Sohail, which he has shared with his clergy and people now for many years, but people really they are hopeful and they are resilient, and they've been through revolutions and horrors before, and they'll get through this one too.
Thank you. I just want to remind people that any questions, just throw them in that chat room down at the bottom. Demetrius is launching that because we're going to open this up now for Q&A. But Rula and Deb and Najat, if anything you want to add to the resiliency of the people, Deb?
If I may, along the lines of what Bob was just saying, one of the things I learned in Jerusalem is not, do you have hope? Where do you see it? But it's, we make hope. And I think that's what the churches are involved in, is when people are in trouble, we don't have magic answers, but we make hope and we try to provide support. So when people say, oh, I have no hope for this, it's like, well, then make some.
Make hope. Love that.
Can I say the Muslim community is a good community? We don't understand Islam. We should be closer, or they should be closer to us, but they are very nice people. They feel they've been not treated well in history. They had big history and now the humiliation. And there is as if a purpose way of making differences between a Christian and a Muslim. We should not really go that way to dwell on that. And if anything is going to happen to the Middle East, it should be together. And now it's the deal of the century. I guess we're getting the stick, not the carrot. Yeah. And it started in Lebanon, and I'm worried about us in Palestine. Our turn is coming. So I hope not many tragedies will hear of. It's difficult to accept. It's difficult to me as a Palestinian. I see Samir died and still he talks about his house in Haifa and where he grew up and his brothers. It's difficult to forget. And sorry, my voice is cracking, but it's okay. Painful.
It is. Thank you. This is why we're so grateful for you being on the call, Najat, as you get to bring your heart to all this. So that we wanted to build humanity in this conversation. Demetrius, what do you have in the chat room?
Sure. So one of our viewers grew up in an American kibbutz off the coast in 1968. And at that time, Lebanon was neutral towards Israel. However, they weren't allowed to cross the border. And the question is, what happened? What would you say happened to the goodwill and spirit of cooperation that existed back then? Let's start with you, Bob.
That's a good question. I don't have enough history in my mind about the history of Lebanon and in relation to Israel, aside from the '67 war and other conflicts that have taken place. I think I'm not capable of really answering that in an intelligent way. But Debbie may have an idea.
Basically, there are negative forces at work in any political system. Lebanon's was precarious, and the government was kind of, I don't know if you call it a theocracy, but your representation was based on your religious affiliation. And the Christians had the presidency before '67, and because they were the majority of the population. After the '67 war, with the massive influx of Palestinian refugees, over the years, the longer the refugees stayed, the more the political discussion came forth about how that representation should change, because now there were more Muslims than Christians, if you count the refugees now as citizens, and that debate ensued. So basically, the negative forces that happen between people of different groups with different personal interests, along with the hunger, the lack of jobs among refugees, and who was actually willing to take care of them. Maybe that was a force that also had some ulterior motives to turn them into militia to serve their own needs. And there were definitely private militia guarding hashish fields and all kinds of things in Lebanon, even during the Golden Age. So I'd say that the negative forces, along with the political dynamics, came to the forefront, and everything blew up.
Thank
Yes.
you. Nijad?
Yes, the problem of Lebanon is their sect system, and their sect system, it goes back to Sykes-Picot when they divided the area, Lebanon and Syria French, and Iraq and Palestine English. So they are now dividing the same thing. But this sect, they never, 17, I learned 17 sects in Lebanon, and each, they say Lebanese, but they actually, they say, yes, we are from Lebanon, but we belong to this party of this Ja'ja, or, whatever you have from those leaders, Walid Jumblat, or those big rich people who own, as if they are owning Lebanon. So this system is really corrupt. It doesn't work in the 21st century. And young people out in the streets, they are demanding to abolish it. You cannot abolish things overnight. It has to grow in your mind also. They are all growing. They ask you, or they would know from your name or language you use, oh, you are Muslim, or you are Christian, you are so and so. And that's not healthy to a country for the 21st century. Instead of qawmiyya, it's nationality. They have to build up nationality. Then there is the problem, when I went there early 60s, we're Phoenicians. What Phoenicians? Who says we're Phoenician? Or some of the Egyptians, we're Coptic. We are from the Pharaohs. This Arab nationalism did not grow well. Instead of growing well, they brought us the Islamic tradition. Go back to Islam. Islam will solve all your problems. Get yourself chador, put scarf, wear this, wear that. More and more division, more and more negative forces. More and more negative forces. So Lebanon has to get rid itself from all that. Christian, Muslim, Maronite, Orthodox. Luckily, we are so few of us, we don't count. So few Protestants, we don't count, except for the Presbyterians, they are more. They are aware of it, but it will not come so quickly. I don't think it's going to come quickly. And the Christians have this spirit of transcendent. We are better than the Muslims. We are more educated. They are all educated. When you sit with a Lebanese policymaker or something, you are so much impressed with his certificates from the best university, his languages, the way he talks. But when it comes to corruption, he's involved. What two sides of that person? So Lebanon has to find itself, and now they are on the way. It's not easy, but they have to. They have to, and they have to recognize Israel. That's another thing. Those Muslims from the nationality part, the resistant, the Hezbollah is the party of God, which is Shiite. And recently I heard Shiite and Sunni. When I was there wasn't such a term with Muslims, all Muslims. So Hezbollah, which takes its orders from Iran, they have like an army within Lebanon. There is Lebanese army, but they have the army. They are stronger and they can fight Israel. Now Israel is in the middle. The world will not allow Israel to be destroyed. You cannot allow it to be destroyed. So they have to admit, they have to come to a compromise. The resistant movement, should recognize Israel. Whether they'll do it by stick or by carrot, I don't know. The other part is more lenient to, yes, they are moderate, we will recognize Israel. Peace is inevitable, we should have peace, and Israel is there to coexist with the rest of the Arab world. So that's the big point. That is the big point.
Najat, thank you. I feel like I just heard the gospel according to Najat.
Gospel. I have a good heart. I don't like any harm to humanity.
Father Bob, do you any comment on the gospel according to Najat?
Well, no, she's obviously right on track. She wrote the book. The question for me in relation to the 68 question is what tripped me up a little bit. It's a great question, but the internal divisions in Lebanon continue, and that's a problem, obviously. And the international circumstances with Iran's participation, as Najat speaks of, and the hot border with Israel is clearly these are really troublesome times, no question about it. And you add Syria to the mix, and it's very difficult right now.
Yeah. Great. Demetrius, you have one more question, I think.
Bob, one of the questions that comes up is what can we as individuals, as a community of faith, how can we be supportive to the people of Lebanon?
Well, here's the thing. Doing this morning is a big thing. Advocacy work is wonderful, and sharing information and solidarity is huge. In addition to that, just to our prayers and our sense of unity with the people of Lebanon, the American Friends of the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem, AFEDJ, and I think Jill is probably all over these people. They have set up a fund that is identifying financial resources to go directly to Lebanon. It's really important to use the American Friends. I mean, we're all friends, that's part of it. But the point is that they can find a way to get the money to Jerusalem, and they can find a way to get the money to Beirut in a way that you and I really can't do. So there are other avenues of support also. The Lebanese Red Cross is receiving funds, a bunch of other places. But for Anglicans, for Episcopalians, that's our automatic route, and we know the funds are well taken care of and are expended accordingly. I will, just as a quick little add, is that we always kind of wonder about, when you send money away like this, is it really going to go where it belongs? Well, in this case, the answer is yes. Having been on all corners of this, both Deborah and myself, living in that office with Archbishop Suhail, watching money coming and going, I can that the money gets where it's supposed to go. And and I, to be very honest about it, when Deb and I were working there, I Sal knew full well that we wouldn't put up on a hanky panky, and happily he didn't either. So this is all good.
Great, and we will definitely make those resources available to the congregation so they can, take advantage and be able to support the people of Lebanon at this difficult time. Are there any other questions, or Najat or Rula, any final thoughts you'd like to add?
It was just a pleasure seeing you all today. We've been separate for so long. I appreciate the discussion, the open venue, because that's how understanding begins, when we start talking to each other and listening to one another. Listening is also just as important as talking. So I wish you all a great day. I do support the American Friends of the Episcopal Diocese of Jerusalem. I know their work. I follow them, and I agree that is the right venue for support. And with that, I sign off.
Thank you, Rula. And thank you everyone for attending. And hopefully you can join us for 11 a.m. worship. And Bob, Deb, Najat, Rula, thank you very much for your participation this morning. Obviously, a lot of insight, which we are very grateful for. And we hope you all have a great day.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
And
Nice
thank
seeing
you for your interest.
Ed and Debbie, nice seeing you.
Yes.
Nice to see you too. Lovely.
Yeah. Let's
Bob
all
and Deb,
pray
you
for
can stay on.
peace.
Kate, you can stay on or not.
Mark, you are so good. You're
Oh,
always
you're-
good.
You're very kind. Thank you. This has been a lot of fun.